Baking is a wonderful activity. It allows us to create delicious treats. Pastry making is a part of baking. It has its own special techniques. These techniques help us make wonderful cakes, pies, and cookies. Let's learn some of these techniques together. We will start with the basics. These basic techniques are easy to learn. Once you know them, you can make many different pastries. Are you ready to begin? Let's get started. Our first technique is called cutting in. This is a fundamental method in pastry making that ensures your baked goods have that perfect, flaky texture. Whether you're making a pie crust, biscuits, or scones, mastering this technique will elevate your baking to a whole new level. It's very important for making flaky pastries. The process involves incorporating cold butter into flour in such a way that the butter remains in small, solid pieces. These pieces of butter create layers in the dough, which puff up and separate when baked, giving you that sought-after flakiness. Think about a delicious pie crust. The golden, crispy layers that melt in your mouth are the result of properly cutting in the butter. This technique is what makes the difference between a dense, tough crust and a light, airy one. You want it to be nice and flaky. Achieving this texture requires patience and precision. The butter must be cold and the flour must be handled gently to avoid overworking the dough, which can lead to a tough texture. That's where cutting in comes in. By using a pastry blender, you can cut the butter into the flour without melting it. This tool helps to distribute the butter evenly throughout the flour, creating small pockets of fat that will expand and create steam during baking. To cut in, we use cold butter and flour. The temperature of the butter is crucial. If the butter is too warm, it will blend too thoroughly with the flour, resulting in a dough that lacks the necessary pockets of fat to create flakiness. We use a tool called a pastry blender. This tool has several blades or wires that help to cut the butter into the flour without melting it. The goal is to achieve a mixture that resembles coarse crumbs, with visible pieces of butter throughout. You can also use two knives. This method involves holding a knife in each hand and cutting through the butter and flour in a crisscross motion. While it may take a bit more time and effort, it can be just as effective as using a pastry blender. The goal is to break the butter into small pieces. These pieces should be about the size of peas. The smaller the pieces, the more evenly they will be distributed throughout the dough, creating a uniform texture. These pieces should be coated in flour. This coating helps to keep the butter pieces separate from each other, ensuring that they create distinct layers in the dough. The flour also helps to absorb some of the moisture from the butter, which can prevent the dough from becoming too wet. This creates a mixture that looks like coarse crumbs. The mixture should have a sandy texture, with visible pieces of butter throughout. This is the ideal consistency for creating a flaky pastry. When baked, these little pieces of butter create steam. The steam is what causes the dough to puff up and create layers. As the butter melts, it releases water, which turns into steam and creates pockets of air in the dough. The steam makes the pastry light and flaky. This is the hallmark of a well-made pastry. The layers should be distinct and separate, with a light, airy texture that melts in your mouth. Remember to keep your butter cold. This cannot be stressed enough. Cold butter is essential for creating the layers that make a pastry flaky. If the butter is too warm, it will blend too thoroughly with the flour, resulting in a dense, tough dough. Cold butter is the key to flaky pastries. By keeping the butter cold, you ensure that it remains in small, solid pieces throughout the dough. These pieces of butter create the layers that make a pastry light, airy, and delicious. Our next technique is creaming. Creaming is a fundamental method in baking that involves mixing butter and sugar together until they become light and fluffy. This process is crucial for creating the perfect texture in many baked goods. We use this technique for cakes and cookies. By creaming the butter and sugar, we incorporate air into the mixture, which helps to give these treats their desired lightness and softness. Creaming helps to make them light and airy. The air pockets formed during this process expand when heated, resulting in a tender and fluffy texture. To cream, we use softened butter and sugar. It's important that the butter is at the right temperature, soft enough to mix easily but not so warm that it melts. We beat them together until the mixture is light and fluffy. This can be done using a stand mixer with a paddle attachment or by hand with a whisk. You can use an electric mixer or a whisk. While an electric mixer makes the process faster and easier, a whisk can also do the job if you don't mind a bit of a workout. As we beat the mixture, we add air to it. This is a critical step because the air bubbles trapped in the mixture will expand during baking, giving the final product its rise and light texture. This air helps the baked goods to rise. Without enough air, the cakes and cookies would be dense and heavy, lacking the desired fluffiness. It also makes them tender. The creaming process not only adds air, but also helps to evenly distribute the fat throughout the batter, contributing to a tender crumb. Make sure your butter is soft, but not melted. If the butter is too hard, it won't mix well with the sugar, and if it's too soft, it won't hold the air bubbles properly. Softened butter creams best with the sugar. The result should be a smooth, creamy mixture that is pale in color and has a light, airy texture. Once the butter and sugar are creamed, you can start adding other ingredients like eggs and flour. This will further build the structure of your batter, ensuring a perfect bake. Mastering the creaming technique is essential for any baker. It's the foundation for many delicious recipes, and with practice, you'll be able to create light, fluffy, and tender baked goods every time. Beating is another important technique. It's all about adding air to our ingredients. We often beat eggs for cakes, mousses, and other desserts. We use a whisk to beat the eggs. We move the whisk quickly back and forth. This adds lots of air to the eggs. The air makes our desserts light and airy. For the best results, use a balloon whisk. A balloon whisk is large and round. It helps to add lots of air to the eggs. Section 5. Folding, gently combining delicate ingredients. Folding is a gentle technique. We use it to combine delicate ingredients. Whipped cream and egg whites are delicate ingredients. We don't want to lose the air we've added to them. We use a rubber spatula to fold. We gently lift the batter and fold it over the delicate ingredients. This mixes everything together without deflating the air. Be gentle when you fold. Use a light hand and don't overmix. Section 6. Kneading, developing gluten for bread doughs. Kneading is an important technique for bread making. It is a fundamental step that transforms a simple mixture of flour, water, yeast, and salt into a cohesive dough that can rise and bake into a delicious loaf of bread. Without proper kneading, the dough would remain a sticky, shapeless mass, unable to hold the gases produced by the yeast during fermentation. It helps to develop gluten in the dough. Gluten is a network of proteins that forms when flour is mixed with water. This network is essential for trapping the carbon dioxide produced by the yeast, which causes the dough to rise. The more you knead, the stronger and more elastic this network becomes, allowing the dough to stretch and expand without tearing. Gluten is what gives bread its chewy texture. This texture is highly desirable in many types of bread, from crusty baguettes to soft sandwich loaves. The chewiness comes from the elasticity of the gluten network, which provides a satisfying bite and helps the bread hold its shape. We use our hands to knead dough. The process involves pressing the dough with the heels of your hands, folding it over, and turning it. This repetitive motion helps to align the gluten strands and distribute the ingredients evenly throughout the dough. We push, fold, and turn the dough. Each motion serves a purpose. Pushing helps to stretch the gluten, folding traps air and layers the dough, and turning ensures that the dough is worked evenly. This combination of actions is what transforms the dough from a sticky mess into a smooth, elastic ball. We do this for several minutes. The exact time can vary depending on the type of bread you're making and the strength of your flour, but generally, kneading for about 10 to 15 minutes is sufficient. You'll know you're done when the dough is smooth, elastic, and no longer sticky. This process helps to develop the gluten. As you knead, you'll notice the dough becoming more cohesive and less sticky. This is a sign that the gluten network is forming and strengthening, which is crucial for the dough's ability to rise and hold its shape during baking. The dough will become smooth and elastic. This transformation is a key indicator that the gluten has developed properly. A well-kneaded dough will feel soft and pliable, and it will stretch without tearing. Knead the dough until it springs back when you poke it. This is known as the window pane test. If you can stretch a small piece of dough into a thin, translucent membrane without it breaking, the gluten is well developed. This is a sign that the gluten is well developed. Proper gluten development is essential for achieving the desired texture and structure in your bread. With practice, you'll become more attuned to the feel of well-kneaded dough and be able to produce consistently excellent bread. Section 7. Stirring. A simple method for combining ingredients. Stirring is a simple technique. We use it to combine ingredients. It is a gentler method than beating or whisking. We use a spoon to stir. We move the spoon around the bowl in a circular motion. We continue stirring until the ingredients are well combined. Be careful not to overmix when stirring. Overmixing can make our pastries tough. Section 8. Whipping, incorporating air into liquids. Whipping is similar to beating. We use it to add air to liquids. Whipped cream is a good example. We use an electric mixer or a whisk to whip. We move the whisk quickly back and forth. This adds air to the liquid and makes it light and fluffy. Use cold cream and a cold bowl for the best results when whipping. Section 9. Blending, quick and easy mixing. Blending is a quick and easy technique. We use a blender to combine ingredients. Blenders are great for making smooth mixtures. We add our ingredients to the blender. We secure the lid and blend until smooth. It's that easy. Be careful not to overblend. Overblending can make our mixtures too thin.